Hello, everyone. My name's Aaron Christensen. This is Horror 101 with Dr. AC, celebrating classic horror throughout history with new episodes every Friday night. If you love your horror with a little extra cheese on top, 1986 might be one of the most glorious years the genre ever produced. Tonight, we're digging into 5 low-budget cult favorites that prove horror and comedy have always made a deliciously messy combination. We're kicking things off with the only film ever directed by the king of horror himself, Maximum Overdrive, written and directed by Stephen King, which imagines a world where machines suddenly develop a murderous attitude. With a pounding soundtrack by AC/DC and a parade of homicidal vehicles, including the legendary Green Goblin Happy Toys semi, this chaotic slice of drive-in madness captures pulpy sensibilities at full throttle. Next is Night of the Creeps, writer-director Fred Dekker's loving B-movie tribute, mixing 1950s alien invasion movies, 1980s college slashers, and a healthy dose of monster comedy. Alongside the film's slimy alien slugs, brought to life through wonderful practical effects, Dekker's cult classic also features the unforgettable Tom Atkins as Detective Ray Cameron, delivering some of the most quotable one-liners in horror history. From there, we go into The Chopping Mall, directed by Jim Wynorski and produced under the legendary B-movie banner of Roger Corman. What begins as a late-night retail hangout quickly becomes a high-tech nightmare when a group of security robots malfunction and begin hunting the teen employees trapped inside. With impressive mechanical effects by Robert Short, the film blends 80s consumer culture with laser-blasting robot carnage. Then there's the gloriously strange TerrorVision, directed by Ted Nicolau and produced by Charles Band under his Empire label. This neon-drenched cable nightmare follows a suburban family whose satellite dish accidentally pulls in a grotesque alien monster from deep space. Creature effects by John Carl Buechler, one of the great practical effects artists of the era, give the film its wonderfully gooey and goofy personality. Finally, we wrap things up with the Canadian cult classic Killer Party, directed by William Fruet. What starts as a college prank movie about sorority initiation rituals takes a bizarre turn into supernatural slasher territory, complete with musical numbers, campus hijinks, and a vengeful spirit lurking in the shadows. So let's jump in the time machine and head back 40 years to a time when practical effects ruled, VHS boxes promised outrageous thrills, and filmmakers weren't afraid to mix genuine scares with a wink and a grin. Grab the pizza and beer and pass the popcorn. It's time for some good old lowbrow entertainment from 1986. We're going to be talking about 5 fantastic little flicks from that era, and we got an awesome panel to chat about it with me. Let's bring everybody in, and let's say hello to Larry Sternshine.
Throw me.
Tim Palace.
Hey, everyone. I was going to say throw me too, but I won't.
Anish Jethmalani.
Hey, who made who?
You got good news and bad news, girls. Good news is your dates are here. What's the bad news? They're dead.
That was Dave James Parker, everybody. And we've got a quintet of questionable quality talking about Maximum Overdrive, Night of the Creeps, Chopping Mall, TerrorVision, and Killer Party, all from 1986 and all celebrating their 40th anniversary. And we'll be talking spoilers, although I don't know how you could spoil these movies. Thanks for coming on the show and welcome. Anish, I'm going to just put you on the spot. You are the one responsible for this episode because you came to me and said, we need to talk about Maximum Overdrive, right? And I was like, I'm not going to give an entire episode to Maximum Overdrive. However, it did spark an idea. And I was like, hey, you know what? We could talk about some less, because we talk about, the classics here. But I think these are classics of a different vein. And I think everybody here would agree that not all horror has to be of the loftiest kind. Doesn't even have to be of the scariest kind. It could just be fun. And I think that's what these 5 films kind of represent. We are going to start things off with Maximum Overdrive. So Anish, how did you come to see this movie for the first time?
Yeah, so 40 years ago, holy cow. I was just a young buck. My dad took me to the movies quite a bit. I saw the trailer for this one, and it was a Stephen King short story. The short story was called Trucks. I didn't know that at the time, but I just loved the concept of the movie based on the trailer. And I said to my dad, I want to go see this. And so we went and saw the movie. I just was completely blown away by it. And I think that was the first time I was exposed to AC/DC. became a huge fan of the band as a result of that movie. I just was really intrigued by the whole story of this alien race that has sort of infiltrated into machines and take over the machines and, want to pretty much wipe out the human race and take over the planet. To this day, I love the soundtrack. I know that the movie hasn't really had a big fan base over the years, but I think also people have come back around to it as well as a guilty pleasure flick, which is the way I view it. And I never get tired of watching it. It was kind of awesome to revisit it this time around as well for this. And just kind of also see it for all the humor that it has as well, because there's a lot of humor. Now, the one thing to note here is that this film had a lot of problems. And Stephen King was the first and utmost biggest problem of this film. He was the writer and he was the director, and he was completely high off of his mind while making this movie. He was jacked up on cocaine, supposedly. And so I know a lot of people who were working on the film in interviews since then kind of tried to scratch that one off their resume. Particularly Emilio Estevez is not a fan of that experience at all. And so it was plagued with a lot of issues. But I think, and in the grand scheme of things, the film actually worked, at least for me it did. And I think it kind of holds up here, 40 years later, with everything that's happening with autonomous vehicles now. And so in some ways it was kind of, predicting one possible future that we are kind of going through right now, which is interesting to see it, 40 years later from that perspective. So, I got a lot more to say, but I wanted to see what others had to say too.
Yeah, the love bug, I think, also predated all of this as well. I'm going to toss the ball over to Dave. How'd you come to this one?
Oh, young. Grew up in a household. My mom loved Stephen King. So we saw this one. I don't remember when I saw it. I was born in 86, so it couldn't have been when it came out. Probably pretty young, 5 or 6. I don't know why I saw it that early. Could rent all these random movies. But Estevez was a staple growing up in that early 90s with the Mighty Ducks movies and the Young Guns movies. So you see Estevez, you see Stephen King. It was a must. This movie I find hilarious because my friend one time told me, he's like, we're all reading these Stephen King novels with such seriousness, but this is the only movie he made. So let's just say that Stephen King sees all his books and the world like this. Just a bunch of crazy, nutso rednecks sweating up their asses, getting chased by trucks. I mean, I actually love this movie. I think it's a lot of fun. And when people are like, the best bad movie ever is Troll 2, I'm like, Troll 2 is actually kind of just like, it's bad, but it's funny. This one, there's like good aspects to it. It's just that the storyline is complete bonkers. It doesn't make sense no matter how you put it together. You're like, so they're controlling the trucks, but not the cars. Yes. But why did that remote control car that probably runs on batteries come to life? The headphones, like, I don't understand any of the logistics. So I think it's literally probably aliens handpicking telekinetically moving stuff from up there. That's the only way it makes sense. And then you're pushing it. It also has a really strong, fun cast, like Pat Hingle. What are you going to, Bubba? His name is Bubba, but he calls everybody Bubba. I don't. That's a Stephen King just insane. I can see him be like, so you want me to call everybody Bubba, but my name is Bubba. Yeah.
That's good. That's good.
Okay.
That's great. Yeah.
It's just all sorts of nonsense. But I love this movie. The bonkers performances. You'll spot like Peter Jason and Giancarlo Esposito in there. It has a good cast and a completely bonkers performance from the woman who has the "Who Made You" spiel. That is just like next level, like Stephen King not pulling her back, but just making it that much more fun. It's fun. I wish we could get the gory footage because as sick as I am, I would cackle with laughter to watch the full version of the kid getting ran over by the steamroller and the coach.
Right. Yeah.
Right in the nuts. Brilliant. Yeah, it's nonsense, but it's the best kind of nonsense. People that take Maximum Overdrive serious are just they're not on the same like level of thinking as this movie because this movie is not really thinking that hard.
Larry, how about you?
Yeah, so with the exception of one movie, all these I either discovered like on HBO or USA Up All Night. So in this case, it's HBO, and then it would play on TBS like all the time eventually. So I've seen this movie millions of times, both cut and uncut, so to speak, theatrical and TV versions, and on the big screen at the marathon. And the thing I really enjoy about this particular movie is there's a lot of personality to it. I've seen the serious version of this they remade for USA Network called Trucks, and that's really boring compared to this one. There's just so much like craziness that it's hard to look away, and there's a lot of really funny dark humor that I appreciated as I got older. As a kid, I was like, oh, he's swearing at him on the machine, but like there's some of the other stuff that I didn't quite get really growing up. And at least the Simpsons in there like going crazy. It's a weird, bizarre, fun little crazy movie. It's perfect for being like 10 years old, 9, 10 when I first saw it,
Yeah, same.
Tim.
This is one that I kind of avoided for a long time. I was familiar with Stephen King very early. My mom was into him and had all the hardcover books in the house. So I was reading him in like middle school and stuff, but I was never into cars or anything really. So I don't know. I just never, and I had heard it was stupid, I think, from my mom. So just put it off for a long time. And yeah, I think Larry mentioned seeing it at a marathon. That's where I first saw it. It was playing with a bunch of other movies, and then this one played at like 3 a.m, something. And I guess it was kind of the perfect first viewing for me. It's kind of out of this world. I wasn't sure how I was feeling at the time about everything. Yeah, revisiting it for this, it's probably to me the weakest of the bunch that we're covering, but there's a lot in there that I like. To me, it doesn't hold together as a whole movie, but definitely a lot of fun moments for me, and I'd have no problem turning it on any day of the week, to be honest.
Well, and I think the fact that the face of the Green Goblin, on the big truck, the Happy Toys truck, that kind of is the feel of this movie. It's a big cartoon, and it feels like it was written by a 4-year-old who's like, the aliens are taking over the machines, and like, what kind of crazy stuff can we do? It feels like that kind of unfettered imagination that the soda pop machine is spitting stuff out, and it hits the guy in the head and it hits him in the balls. This is my 4-year-old nephew talking to me about the greatest movie he's ever seen. It was produced by Dino De Laurentiis, and that I think had a lot to do with the success of it in terms of it getting out into the world. Like, this is one that got the widest release.
Yeah.
And the fact that he was able to get AC/DC to do the soundtrack because Stephen King was a big AC/DC fan. So I think there's a lot of energy behind this movie. Yeah. It feels manic. It feels, several people have said, bonkers and insane and crazy. And I think that's just kind of the fuel that this thing is running on. Larry, I also checked out the Trucks movie because I hadn't seen it before. And I was like, well, what would it be like if this was some kind of hidden gem? And really what that one is, it's a basic, what if the cars and trucks came to life? And what if Timothy Busfield was the star? And you go, yeah, it's like that. Okay, never mind. I'm going to go back to Maximum Overdrive.
Sam Raimi kind of owes his career a little bit to this movie. Because it turns out that Stephen King was a huge fan of the original Evil Dead. And he kind of nudged Dino De Laurentiis on the shoulder and said, hey, you got to see this movie. And he did, and decided to back Evil Dead 2 as a result of that, because the whole Evil Dead franchise was not even a franchise until Maximum Overdrive happened. And it was the pairing of those two that led to Evil Dead 2 becoming a reality. And from there on out, then it became a huge success. But I think that's one interesting tidbit about this. I think for me, out of this grouping of films, this to me was the one that probably tried to take itself more seriously, even though there was lots of, schlockiness happening throughout the film. But I think it tried to take itself more seriously as a horror film. Whereas the others, have more sort of high comedic elements to it. And, some scenes that stand out to me from the film itself was the opening scene, which is, the entire bridge going up and all these cars kind of just starting to pile on top of another. people getting, ruthlessly, killed as a result of that. So it kind of makes you wonder how that scene was shot, and what they had to go through to shoot that scene. Another scene that kind of stands out to me is the entire scene with the young boy riding through the block, witnessing all of the dead bodies and how people are, killed in various ways, while you got the soundtrack of AC/DC in the background, which is, again, I think in my mind, one of the biggest stars of this movie is that soundtrack, because a lot of those songs became very iconic. They were kind of they were brought from previous AC/DC albums, but there were a few of them that were made just strictly for this movie, and they became, signature songs for that band. And a lot of people didn't know really AC/DC to a certain extent until this movie, like me.
You certainly didn't.
Yeah, no, I had no idea who they were. So that was one of the highlights, again, from this film for me as well, is just that sort of, really, that hard rock kind of anthem going on behind all of these scenes as well. And some of the scenes at the gas station as well, at the Dixie Boy gas station, where they're trying to refuel all the trucks while you got Hell's Bells in the background. So just some of those things that happened that continue to kind of stand out. Not everybody's cup of tea, but still, for me, for this 10-year-old, 11-year-old boy at that time, still a great memory.
The one thing I was just thinking of when we were talking about AC/DC real quick is just how metal the title of this movie is. Like Maximum Overdrive. It doesn't really mean anything, but it just sounds like you're about ready to see something just like visceral. Being a Stephen King movie too, I think there were some expectations that people might have had. I mean, when I was a kid watching it, when they were trying to escape and all the trucks are going and destroying the whole place, and then they use the rocket launcher to blow up the truck and everything. And one dude just randomly gets killed. It's just you never know what's going to happen, because you think the movie's over, and then somebody else just dies just because I guess they needed one more death or something. It's just a very unique movie as a kid, especially when I'm kind of getting into my own of what I like about horror, and especially horror comedy was a big thing for me growing up. So it was really easy to watch this one over and over again a lot when I was growing up.
Oh, I do want to make a correction. Right after I said it, I was like, oh no, I got my Deadwood alumni mixed up. Leon Rippey, not Peter Jason. Switched them up, but they're both in.
I was having a moment. I'm like, Peter Jason's in although
No,
anybody could be in this movie.
It was a car. Yeah, and the one thing I do want to mention, Who Made Who, is probably my favorite AC/DC song. It's just a lot of fun. I do think the dialogue is really funny. That's where the comedy comes from. The characters are bizarre, but they're taking the situation seriously. Even in the beginning, there's small little throwaway lines when they're playing cards in that thing and they're not paying attention. He's like, "Do you even know how to play this game?" He's like picking his nose. He's like, "Yeah," just ridiculous stuff like that. I don't have all that much to say about the movie, but I am a huge fan of it. Like I said, it's just vastly entertaining, and it does have the one Kingism that he always does, because King is a religious guy. I mean, we have the whole story with Kubrick calling him, asking about, "Do you believe in God?" and he says yes, but he will always put in a character that is like the fake Christian character. And we have the Bible salesman here, which is one of the funniest characters. He's just actually ends up being like the fake, the guy who's overly religious in the movie always ends up being an absolute piece of shit. Like King hates the preachers. He has this hate kind of characters and a lot of staple King characters in here. Not much to say about it, except that it's always been a favorite. And I do want to mention one more thing that's coming to me. So we have that carryover from Psycho, right? The with the knife. And then we used it in The Entity. And then the ultimate with Maximum Overdrive, every time somebody gets hit, you have that the horn just to kind of like wake you back up. Again, also mentioned Pat Hingle, the great line when he tells, he's like, "Yeah, your dad got hit out by one of those." He says something like when he gets killed, and he's just like, "You got hit by one of the." I don't remember what the reference he uses for a truck. And then everybody's like, "What the hell's your problem?" He's like, I just recently rewatched Sudden Impact. The Clint Eastwood Dirty Harry 4, and Pat Hingle is the cop in that movie. He's such an asshole. He's good at playing an asshole.
Yeah, I saw him recently in The Grifters, and he's just a monster in that one as well. But yeah, legendary character actor. Tim, what are some favorite moments for you?
Like I mentioned, like the trucks at first didn't grab me, so I was a fan that like kind of everything was at play here, but then there was no kind of rules established. You weren't sure what to really expect. Like you mentioned, that kid going down the street and seeing all those different dead bodies, and that's one of my favorite moments. Just seeing all the weird possibilities of stuff going wrong. Um, the weird stuff in the game room where he's almost like hypnotized. You're not sure like what can happen through any kind of machine. And then even with the trucks themselves, there's just like a real sense of danger for these characters and the actors themselves. Just I felt like they're in peril when they're close to these trucks. So I don't know. It keeps me on edge that way.
It's important to note, like, this was a problematic film. Stephen King did not direct anymore after this. He wanted to direct this film because he felt like all the other films, particularly, I think The Shining probably was one that kind of stuck out for him. It was like, well, if they can't do it well, I'm going to do it myself. That was a big mistake. The other thing to note here is that he had George Romero on set pretty much the entire time. And, you know, there is this thinking that Romero probably was really the one directing the movie and not King. Who knows? Maybe Romero was trying to salvage something for him, but problematic film for sure.
I mean, because the two of them had hooked up early on. I mean, they did Creepshow together, you know, in 1982. And so, yeah, I get the sense that Romero was there, certainly trying to keep his friend on track, you know, having never directed a movie before. And you could do worse than to have George Romero as the angel on your shoulder. One thing I read about was that our director of photography, Armando Nanuzzi, very respected. He did Jesus of Nazareth and La Cage aux Folles and Silver Bullet. And unfortunately on this one, there was an accident where a splinter went into his eye. And he ended up losing that eye and having a lawsuit against De Laurentiis. But he went on to continue his career as a cinematographer. He did, you know, another like 20, 30, 40 films after this. So you got to love that Italian spirit.
Yeah.
I didn't know about that. The Romero thing, I didn't hear about that until just now. That's why I love coming on the show. I learn something new every time. I swear to God. That was amazing.
Yeah.
And I think also just really quick to the legacy of this movie. Like I said before, like, you know, the idea of machines kind of operating by themselves was really just kind of far-fetched. You know, we're kind of living in a time now where it's not really far-fetched. Right. You have autonomous vehicles running themselves. And there have been incidents with some of these vehicles killing people. Yep. So in some ways, Maximum Overdrive was kind of, you know, foreshadowing a little bit of what is to come 40 years later, not in the sense of aliens taking over these machines, but, you know, some kind of sentient being that is part of the things that we come to rely on turning back against humans. And I think it's probably going to be more of that in the future.
When I saw the steamroller go over the kid's head, I mean, that was one of those moments where you go, okay, this is somebody who has been waiting to do this his entire life. He's like, I really want to see a kid get run over by a steamroller. And so that is one of the first things that he gets, you know, off of his bingo card. There's some serious tones to it. There's also just so much manic energy that it just kind of carries the day. Let's skip ahead to our next movie, Night of the Creeps, 1986. This was another one that got a wider theatrical release. It was released by Columbia TriStar and written and directed by Fred Dekker, who would later go on to do The Monster Squad. Dave, would you mind kicking us off with that one? What was your introduction to this film?
Oh, pretty young too, probably 10, 12 to 12 area. And I think this one is leaps and bounds better than the other films. I don't really think there's a comparison. I think this is a vastly superior horror movie. It's one of my personal favorites. And it's probably the one that is most reflective of the historical reoccurrence when you talk the 80s, the 50s to the 80s. They all have it, though. If you look at the machines coming to life, that's a Maximum Overdrive shopping mall. Killer Party has the 50s kind of drive-in, all that kind of stuff here. But Night of the Creeps is essentially just your 50s kind of horror film retold in the 80s package, which is Killer Clowns, millions of the Blob remake. And it's kind of perfect in that aspect. It kind of mixture of genres, and Fred Dekker would go on to do Monster Squad, very similar in that vein, reusing some of the same jokes. And Tom Atkins is a amazing character actor, and this is probably his strongest performance, I think, because he got the most to do. Endless one-liners, just perfect as Detective Cameron. It's a rare movie where they do the whole dumb last names all being horror directors to the point where, but I forgive it because this one, it doesn't bother me as much. Like Carpenter Hooper, it's like, shut up. But it's still one of my all-time favorite movies. They do it in Dead Next Door to a nauseating degree as well, but both movies I love. I think that the starting in the 50s is brilliant too, and we would see so much of this space crash landing starting early in the 80s. Alien kind of kickstarted that, right? And then we had the to Earth, right? The 50s to Earth, all the stuff that Critters the same year, Deadly Spawn, Night Beast. It's very common. I think this is the best of those, honestly. Mixing in the zombies, and they do the 80s classic fraternity sorority stuff so well that was prevalent in the early 80s with the sex comedies. So it's just a mixture of all these genres coming to like bliss. I think it's a fantastic movie with great effects, and I'd be hard pressed to pick a more favorite movie from 86 that carries that 80s charm. My favorite from 86 doesn't have any of that 80s charm. It's Henry, but this is my second favorite movie, and I think it's the quintessential 80s zombie horror film.
Do not
later ripped off by Slither, but I love that movie too. So,
those of you at home, do not ever pair Night of the Creeps with Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer. It's a bad idea. Tim, how about you?
It had to be my parents renting it or watching it on cable or something. I was really young, and I just remembered the black slug creeps, and they like the image of them like on someone's face. Like that's all I remembered about the movie, and it like scared the shit out of me. I had nightmares about it. And like years later, I'm talking to someone, maybe my mom even, and asking like, do you know what movie that was? And so I think you're talking about Night of the Creeps. I revisited it, and just with the kind of comedic almost beginning of the movie, I was like, oh no, I don't think this is gonna be the movie. But but I kept watching, and I was like, yeah, I do think it's the movie, and I'm like getting more and more drawn in. I'm like, yeah, I think this is what scared the shit out of me as a kid, but it's kind of cheesy to me now. But revisiting it for this, I see it as a more serious film almost every time I watch it, and there's like kind of a real sense of sadness to some of it. But yeah, it's definitely probably my favorite of the bunch as well, and just a real strong film.
Yeah, so Night of the Creeps is the reason why I put my name on the dotted line for this episode. It's legitimately one of my favorite movies ever. What was it, mid-2000s, I went to Flashback Weekend, and Tom Atkins was there, and there was no line for him at all. So I'm like, this is amazing. I'm going to go talk to Tom. And we had a nice little conversation, and I was talking to him how much I love this movie. And this was before you could get it on DVD or VHS, or it was just nobody knew who had the rights. But you could tell that he loved this movie and really enjoyed his time with it, and he knew that this was one of the ones that people most recognize him for, and so that was really cool to talk to him about it. But like, I've seen this movie thousands of times. I love it so much. What's cool about it too is because, again, it really got me into horror and horror comedies, which is what allowed me to stay with horror genre, is something I really loved. But it also gave me, there's scenes that legitimately made me sad, and I kind of realized that like movies can make you emotional in all sorts of different ways, so like 9 years old me watching this movie on VHS, I just sort of, it was just like a big one for me to just kind of maybe realize what movies can do, which is odd to think. You think it'd be like E.T. or something, but it's like Night of the Creeps is one of those movies.
Totally.
Anish, how about you?
This was the first time I watched the movie.
I wondered.
I never had seen it before. I had always heard about it, but until it kind of came up for this segment, it was my first time watching it, and I really loved it. I thought it was so fun to watch. I'm a big fan of Tom Atkins, just from all of the John Carpenter films he's been in. But I think the thing that really stood out to me was it felt like, to me, it was an homage to the B movie genre of the 50s and 60s. And I think there was just a passion and love for those kind of films that was expressed in this movie. So it was great to see that. It was great to see, Jason Lively, who, I only knew from the Vacation movie. I didn't really know him outside of that. And so to see him in a whole completely different character was really, really fantastic. And then, the Jill Whitlow, who was the female lead, to see her character kind of, grow from this sort of, really being sort of this helpless, stereotypical female character to becoming sort of much more, heroic towards the end, setting up sort of like this kind of Sarah Connor-esque, fighting back against the bad guys. It was cool to see that as well. So I think all in all, it was just a fun time watching this movie.
And what you pointed out, the idea that this is such a combination of things. I mean, it's killer slugs and it's zombies and it's this and it's a cop movie. I love how much energy goes into that. And I love the fact that you brought up both Slither and that Larry brought up Flashback Weekend, because I remember when they were doing the promotional tour for Slither, you had Michael Rooker.
Yeah.
And you had Nathan Fillion who were promoting Slither. And I remember them talking about how Night of the Creeps, somebody was like, "Hey, Night of the Creeps." And they're like, yeah. But I don't think it had gotten a big home video release at that point. So only the real like diehard horror fans had even heard of Night of the Creeps. So there was a whole like thing about like, did they rip it off? Did they not? I mean, let's not go back and talk about David Cronenberg's Shivers, which predates all of that. That was a super fun movie, Slither. And then get to watch this and compare and contrast. I think Fred Dekker has such a love of monster movies in general. I mean, that's evidenced by both Monster Squad and this. And he is bringing just so much energy. And I think what you said, Larry, the fact that this is a horror comedy in name only, right? It's like you have funny characters and you have outrageous scenarios, but everybody's taking it pretty seriously, and I like that. To me, it feels that same way about Maximum Overdrive and most of these movies, that they're heightened situations, but everybody that's there is taking it seriously. They just happen to be funny people who say funny things to each other. And
the other thing is the Tom Atkins character is sort of kind of also an homage to film noir to a certain extent as well.
Certainly.
His character is so kind of like heightened, and kind of giving the one-liners as well, and the looks, and so there was definitely a style to the playing of that character that I really appreciated as well. For me, the title of the movie kind of, you would think it would imply the alien creatures and so forth, but for whatever reason, it kind of hit me that most of the guys that they take over, the zombies, are
actual creeps,
real assholes, and they're the creeps, right? And it sort of kind of just talks about like how men treat women and like how the women take their revenge. And so like, I just appreciated that sort of subtle angle.
And it's also worth pointing out that this is KNB, providing the effects, and they are really great effects. I don't know if they were called KNB at the time.
Yeah, they were. Yeah,
but the effects are great. I'd like to hear what some people's favorite moments are. It doesn't necessarily have to be effects related. I also like the fact that we have a character who is handicapped and not anything is made of it. And that was a big thing that Fred Dekker was all about. He's like, I'm just going to have a character who's just a human being. And I thought that was a really smart and sensitive move on his part.
The two that stick out to me, the first one would be an early use of a lawnmower to kill zombies. That not quite as over the top as Dead Alive, but it's an early use of that. But also to speak to the seriousness, that scene when he's listening to his friend's audio recording of what it's like to have a slug inside of him, and he goes finds him. Like, I was crying as a kid. It still makes me a little sad now. Not a lot of horror films at that time, especially one that has zombies and slugs and comedy, to have something that is that heartfelt about that. And that one always kind of stuck with me as something about that movie.
Oh, some of my favorite moments are some of the one-liners, but not just because everything that comes out of Atkins' mouth is gold. But Vic Polaris, I think that's how you say his name. He plays Brogan in Graveyard Shift. He was always a great oaf in that movie. So he has one of the best lines as the coroner when they're walking out and he walks by Atkins and they're carrying out the house mom. And he's like, we used a different piece, different stretch for every piece. We'd be here all night. Because he got chopped up in so many pieces. So that's a smaller role from him. And you'll notice if you have a good eye, you'll notice Robert Kerman from Cannibal Holocaust, Arbola himself from Debbie Does Dallas popping up in here as a cop. And you also have he has a nice little line and moment in there, which is kind of crazy to see him in this movie here. But there's just a lot of way the film's edited. It's so stylized, mixing in the classic 50s and 80s music. And the beginning, when we cut right before that axe hits, that's a brilliant moment. We cut right to the 80s, and the music comes in. Dun, 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 dun. It's just very catchy. It's quintessential 80s. Has the beautiful montage where all the people are getting ready for the prom. It's such a great movie. And there's another really good edited scene, and it's a very small throwaway scene. And I don't think that anyone, I'm probably just crazy. I love that scene when JC, he tries to talk to like the girl and bring over his friend. And there's that one guy with the unibrow, and they kind of shove him off, and like they're staring at him, like when he's walking away and the music's playing in the background. And it shows like a little bit of alienation, how they are kind of outcast in that way. And JC is a great character. You gotta love JC. He made the fan favorite, the actual kid who has the disability, like you guys were saying. That's very, very fun on that. But yeah, it's just a great movie, a lot of fun. And I prefer the theatrical ending, which is rare. I think the director's cut ending is cool to see, but I'm kind of disappointed that the 4K does not. They don't do seamless branching on the Shout Factory. You can only watch the director's cut in 4K when they could easily just seamlessly branched the theatrical cut at the end, like Arrow too. Like I'm saying easy, like I could do it, but Arrow does it all the time. So like I can imagine that what Arrow could do, Screen Factory could do as well. But yeah.
For our listeners, what could you break those down? Like what's the theatrical ending versus the director's ending?
The theatrical is the standard where it's kind of a downer. They're both kind of downer endings where Jill goes down to pet the dog that's been running amok and spreading leeches through everything. And she kind of goes down and you see the slug kind of come at the camera, suggesting she maybe possibly got the slug in her mouth. And the director's cut ending is you see a burnt up Tom Atkins, obviously infected with the creeps, walking through the cemetery, and you see the overhead, the spaceships kind of shining lights trying to find the slugs in the cemetery, assuming we're going to have like a Return of the Living Dead style story here where they're going to get down into the crypt and bring back zombies from the grave. So it's both endings are, a little downbeat, but unfortunately we didn't get a sequel to Creeps. I would have loved to see one.
Yeah. I really like some of the quieter moments that let the characters breathe in this movie, especially the Tom Atkins when he's telling his story about what happened. Everything kind of from the beginning, you see why that's in the movie now. Like he pulls all that together, and just brings a seriousness to it about what they're about to walk into too. So, and then earlier in the film, when JC's kind of calling out Chris about being an asshole, I don't think a lot of movies would take the time to do anything like that nowadays, and it's honestly just refreshing to see these characters act like real people in real situations, even though there is this kind of craziness around them.
Yeah, I love the Tom Atkins monologue as well. I thought that was a really beautiful scene. The other two scenes that really stood out to me was the bathroom stall scene where JC, the little creatures are like roaming around on the floor. One thing that I was like sitting there watching it, I was like, how do they do this? And so it was interesting to watch that film. Very scary moment as well. And I think the camera perspective work in that was really fantastic. And then, the very beginning shot of this film with the two aliens running down the hallway of the mothership, trying to catch that alien who's trying to sort of, throw the experiment out, and then them talking into their alien gibberish. And then you're seeing the subtitles of what they're saying is both hilarious. And also just the costuming on that too was really fantastic as well. So those scenes I really enjoyed.
A couple of fun facts. So we have Steve Miner actually doing some second unit work on this one. And then Roger George does some of the special effects. And Roger George was also involved in our next film, which is Chopping Mall, also for 1986, and directed by Jim Wynorski. I was saying Roger George, he was one of the people who did the special effects alongside Robert Short, who designed the Killbots, which was the original title for this film, called Chopping Mall because, still trying to cash in on the slasher craze. I think Killbots is a far more honest title. It's also, I think, just a better title. But Robert Short, who designed the Killbots, he won an Oscar for Beetlejuice. Anish, had you seen Chopping Mall before?
No. This was my first, all of these movies except for Maximum Overdrive was my first time seeing it. Boy,
that's awesome.
The one thing that I kind of sat there watching, these actors took their work very seriously, and you could tell. And they were dealing with quite a script to be able to handle. I mean, and it just kept reminding me of like the anti-short circuit. These robots, definitely not Johnny Number 5 for sure. But they, the way that they, go across this mall and try to survive, and the way that they are killed off randomly in spectacular ways. I just appreciated how over the top the film was. There are moments where I was like, okay, you could probably just, push that robot down, you'd be okay. but it was, I just felt like it embraced its over the topness, and it is what it is, and you either like it or you don't like it.
It is unabashedly what it is.
It is unabashedly what it is. Yeah.
It does predate RoboCop's Ed 209. Tim.
I've always been a big fan. This movie just moves at a great clip. There's not a dull moment in the bunch. I had mentioned backstage, I really like how the character actors, the side characters in this, bring together all the movies we're covering. You have Dick Miller in here, who was also in Night of the Creeps. We didn't give a shout out. That's a great scene in that movie.
Nice.
Paul Bartel, who's in Killer Party, Mary Warrenoff, and Garrett Graham will be in TerrorVision. So many people in this. And the robots, they're the stars, and the mall, the setting. You don't see a setting like that anymore. It's just
Old Sherman Oaks,
yeah, this is just a product of its time, and it's great. I love this movie.
Larry, how about you?
Yeah, this was one of those USA Up All Night first time views. I don't know if it was around this year or Gilbert Gottfried era Up All Night, but it wasn't until when they did it on Joe Bob that I actually saw it on, the uncut version, like the theatrical version with all the effects and the exploding heads and everything. And I really like this movie because it's another one that it's fun and silly, but it really takes itself as like a movie that is to be taken serious. It's not like a wink and a nudge at all in this particular one. And it's got a lot of great effects. And it's one of those movies that I would love to see a newer version with kind of the robots we're seeing now, the AI robots. You could do a Killbots one, and you could do a slasher chopping mall if you wanted. The actors they have in it are all top notch, like Barbara Crampton and whatnot. And all the great character actors and things. It's just, it's definitely a fun one. You could, get a bunch of people over together and be one of the movies in your marathon.
Kelly Maroney as well, who was the first actor to really be the first, inspiration for Buffy the Vampire Slayer in Night of the Comet, and then Tony O'Dell from The Karate Kid, so they're a lot of these actors who I'd seen in other movies showed up in this one, and it was cool to see those folks.
Dave, I'm excited to hear your origin story on this one.
Probably solid around 12 to 15 earlier watch, but it wasn't one that I watched a bunch. I watched it a couple times and enjoyed it. Very fast-paced movie. I really do like the idea, right? I can't believe I didn't mention the Dick Miller and Night of the Creeps. That's probably flamethrower. Anyway, but he is cantankerous. He's so good at it. And he basically reprising his role as Walter Paisley from Bucket of Blood here, just bitching and moaning. Like you give Dick Miller a cheeseburger, he'll turn it into a steak. And he just does that, just that little mopping scene. Also, I mean, we should mention that Paul Bartel and Mary Warnoff are reprising the roles from Eating Raoul as the Blands, which is a fantastic movie from the 80s, 82, which is basically a reoccurrence of the 50s style sitcom as a demented cannibal kind of weird love story thing. Very funny. So there's a lot of going on. The score in Chopping Mall is very good. It's a fantastic score. It's very fast paced. And I do like the one thing about this kind of, at least a few of these movies that we picked, they're kind of like little picks of like the cheap movies made. We have Empire in here. We have De Laurentiis, of course. We have Corman, and we have it's a Canadian exploitation film, although I don't think it's a tax shelter. I think by the early 80s that was kind of dying out, but I'm not 100%. Kelly Maroney is cast perfectly as the mall kind of course, Night of the Comet, fantastic movie too. The one thing I will say, and this is going to be, I'm slight negative on this, and I don't hate the movie at all. I enjoy it vastly. The movie is very fast-paced and short, But I think that even at the end of the runtime, I'm like, the tank's getting a little empty, guys. Like you can kind of tell. And Wynorski was probably 100%. He said he had help from Corman cutting this up, like cutting scenes out. And he thanks him. Very rarely is a director going to have the know-all to be like, you know what? Corman was right. I should have cut this. I mean, like a lot of guys would be like, they butchered my movie. They killed my movie, Chopping Ball. Like in reality, it's like, no, this needs to be fast paced. And Wynorski is a fan of Brest. So if you are as well, there's plenty in here.
Yep. I'm really glad you brought up the Roger Corman. As you said, this is a Concord film. This was Wynorski's second film, I believe. And as with most of the people who come out of the Corman factory, they do thank Corman for his input. Corman was a smart person. He knew how to tap into what the public wanted. And so when I saw the runtime on this, I'm like, thank God, like, why don't we get 80-minute movies anymore, especially when they're these kind of movies? Like this really should be a cheeseburger of a movie where you just like, oh, that was fun and I'm done now. But yeah, Wynorski is somebody who, if you dig deeper into his filmography, which I can't necessarily say I recommend, but he's had some fun doing the Roger Corman remakes of Not of This Earth and The Wasp Woman. Those are two of the favorites that he's done. He had also did Deathstalker 2. What are you holding up, Tim? Oh, Munchie.
Munchie, autographed by Jim Wynorski.
Nice.
He also did the Bear Wench Project franchise, as Dave alluded. Jim is a fan of the female form, and he likes to show it off as much as he can. I mean, I think almost everybody pops their top on this one, except for Kelly Maroney.
Yeah, I did hear that was a requirement from Corman, though.
I believe it. I mean, Corman likes to, he knows what to sell for sure. I think Wynorski is a bigger fan of boobs. Corman just sees them as a selling point.
Yeah.
I was just going to bring up Susie Slater, because
please do.
She obviously is the one who's most exposed. There was something interesting about her performance in the sense that she kind of leans into the femme fatale kind of role, and she's a supporting character, right? But her death is pretty spectacular.
Oh my gosh.
In this movie, and that was the one moment that really kind of stood out to me.
For sure. And yeah, Chuck Serino is our composer. He did a lot of stuff with Jim, but yeah, I think like this is that kind of quintessential electronic score that becomes very indicative of particularly our low budget horror films.
Yeah, you just mentioned the score. I like it a lot. That was his first movie. He had known Jim before this, and Wynorski was kind of like, well, Corman's given me a shot here. I'll give this guy a shot. And he was like really happy with it. You could tell they were both fans of spaghetti westerns, and there's kind of showdown theme toward the end that I really like, mixed with electronics. So that's kind of right up my alley. But yeah, and Anish mentioned the death of Susie Slater. That's Wynorski calls it the second greatest head explosion of all time, Scanners being the first. I have to agree. I can't remember the year Deadly Friend came out, the Wes Craven movie, but
isn't that is that the same year, or is that 87?
Might be. I was thinking it was maybe 86.
Oh my gosh.
But yeah, exploding heads will always win me over. They don't look the most threatening, but I'm just amazed that these are like real remote controlled robots.
Yeah, agreed. I like that a lot. Also, let's just go back to Maximum Overdrive really quick and be like, making a truck drive around on its own can't be easy. So I'm going to give hats off to people, like you're hauling something around without your normal, person driving it. So there's got to be some kind of mechanical wizardry going on under the hood that we do not know about, and is highly appreciated.
I feel like they did a really good job with the stunts in this one, because I feel like there's a lot of running around and diving away from all the explosions and things are exploding and stuff. It's that was something I really appreciate about this particular movie.
Well, and we did talk about Roger Corman, but Julie Corman is our official credited producer here, and she was absolutely essential to the success of the later Corman films, both in the 80s and moving into the 90s.
I don't have that many fine moments in here. Like, I like the movie. I think it's very, meat and potatoes, very fast paced. The one thing I will mention is Jim Wynorski is kind of underrated when it comes to action shooting. And this movie is predominantly an action movie after they get the guns, which is guns in a mall. Come on, guys. Dawn of the Dead did it, but so you can't really shake a finger at it. But that's back when malls were very magical, when it's just like, what do we need? Any store can be in here. Like, guys, we just throw a grocery store in here.
They had a
Honestly,
locker room. And
I was watching this movie. I was like, malls, I don't think we have malls like this anymore. And like, for those of us who did grow up in the 80s and 90s, like, malls were just such a staple. This was where you spent your time, you know, as a young adult and as you became an adult. You know, malls were where you went. The idea of like, yeah, you got to go up different floors and you got to find different things. There was such a wave of nostalgia hitting me for so many of these movies, because this is pretty much when I was in high school. Yeah, I am those people running around the mall there.
This is the quintessential like mall to shoot at. Like, I think Commando and Mausoleum, same mall. Phantom of the Mall, which is a nonsense movie. Love Phantom of the Mall. It's terrible, but great at the same time. It's like one of those like, who the fuck made this? But also, like, I do mention Wynorski's action. Like, so his movies will start off as like slashers, but then eventually they just turn to actions, like Sorority House Massacre 2 and Hard to Die. And I know people are like, Sorority House Massacre 2, much better than the first one. It's just like, instead of a dull like Halloween remake, we have a kind of ridiculous, silly movie that's self-aware of its nonsense. And Wynorski didn't touch the first one, but right when you pop in the second, you're like, oh, this is definitely a Wynorski movie. And it's like, so yeah, you could see his DNA. And I'm not like, a lot of his more modern movies, it's not my thing, so I avoid them. But when it comes to 80s stuff, he's pretty damn good in that kind of world. So, and this one's perfect. It's this is a movie that you would rent at the video store with about 3 or 4 others and be like, that was very satisfying. I will see this again.
And before we jump off of this one, Tom Richmond, our director of photography, I was looking at his resume, and he did a lot of really cool like indie darlings and music videos, but he also did Rob Zombie's House of a Thousand Corpses. Pretty stellar resume. Look up Tom Richmond. He also did Killing Zoe. Worth checking out.
Russell Todd. Just want to mention him really quick because, you know, he made an appearance in Friday the 13th Part 2. And there was, you know, that scene where one of my favorite moments, which is, you know, he tries to jump in a golf cart and aim for one of the robots, and then, you know, spectacularly dies in a very over the top way. And then the actress Carrie Emerson, who was his girlfriend in that as well, same thing. And then the other thing I want to mention really quick is the scene in the ducks, where they're kind of walking through and sort of feeling the claustrophobia of that, was pretty effective as well. So
yeah, let's dive ahead into TerrorVision. This is from Charles Band and his Empire group. This is fresh off the success of Reanimator. Lots of good stuff was coming out of Italy at the time, because that's where Band was based, his little studio. This is produced by Albert Band, and it has a bunch of really cool people we've already mentioned, like Mary Warrenov and Garrett Graham. It's written and directed by Tid Nicolau, who would become famous for the Subspecies series. Any memories on this one?
Yeah, you know, I have to correct myself. I actually saw this the first time on Channel 50 in Chicago, WPWR, on a Saturday night. And I'll always remember the scene. It's at the end of the movie. So when the horror host kills the alien, ruining the whole plan and stuff, like, that is stuck in my head for some reason. Like every now and then I'll just randomly think of that. I clearly didn't remember any of the swinging stuff when I was a kid, but now I'm just like, oh wow, that was very strange for me, going back and rewatching it.
I'm not sure the first time I watched this, but yeah, this is something like I enjoy more and more every time I watch it. Kind of looking at it as straight comedy. It's hilarious in parts. Garrett Graham is just like a revelation to me in this movie. Holy tomatoes, and the Pleasure Palace, and even his little Mr. Cool license plate with the little R. But yeah, just everyone is just so over the top. It's like a live action cartoon, but it really works. Usually that doesn't, if someone described that to me, it wouldn't be something that I necessarily like, but it really works here. And just everyone's giving it their all. And just, I enjoy this movie quite a bit.
Yeah, a ton of energy on this one, and, you know, great special effects. It's a lot of fun. I think that's all it ever set out to be. This movie is different in that regard, in that this does feel more like a comedy straight ahead comedy, as opposed to amusing characters that are dealing with the situation. Everybody is just pitching it, to 11. Niche, curious to hear how this one landed for you.
Yeah. So full disclosure, I didn't get a chance to see the entire film.
Well, I forgot. Sorry.
But that's okay. That's okay. I did get a chance to see some of it. And the one thing that I will say is that it is way over the top, and it embraces itself as being way over the top. As long as I could sort of live with that and just kind of buy it for what it was, then I'm on for the ride. But I think it had sort of like this, in some weird way, I kind of kept getting reminded of Beetlejuice to a certain extent, and of that sort of nuclear family and how heightened they are. So I had sort of reminiscence of that. And then sort of a quick thing about the cameo there from Wasp, the lead singer from Wasp. That music video was actually taken from a movie called The Dungeon Master, which, if you haven't seen, is a spectacular, great movie. I saw that movie with back in the movie theater as well. And but overall, I mean, this movie, I appreciated the puppetry of the actual monster.
Oh yeah,
that was really fantastic as well, just to see how and it's a common theme with all of these movies, right? Today they would probably use some kind of digital imaging to, put some of these sort of, whether it be the trucks or this monster or something, some of the robots. But here, they use the real deal, and it's really cool to see some of that stuff.
Yeah. Well,
practical effects, baby.
I was going to say, even like the hot tub, they have dry ice in there for that fog that's on there. That would be just all CGI now.
Yeah.
It's John Carl Buechler as our effects guy. That big creature that comes out of the TV. When I saw this for the first time, I was like, that is the best thing I've ever seen in my life. Like, I love how goofy that monster is. And I love that it just goes out.
The hungry beast.
Dave, how about you?
Oh yeah, I saw this one probably pretty young too. It's a favorite of mine, and I understand that a lot of people do not like it. They're taking it way too serious. Right from the opening, it has the TerrorVision ridiculous song that catches you.
Oh, Richard Band.
That's actually the Fibonacci's.
Wait, who is it? Sorry, I
Richard Band does the score though, right?
Yes.
Yeah, he does the score, but all the songs are by the Fibonacci's. Yeah, they were a band. I knew them. They have a song at the end of the movie Android. The song was called Sergio Leone, and I used to love that song. And that's the only time I had heard them. But yeah, they did a few of the songs on this, including TerrorVision, which has been stuck in my head since we watched it about a month ago.
Corman, Android's a Corman produced one. Odd movie, very odd movie with Don Upper from Critters from '86. So it's all connected.
Yep.
So the score right when it opens and has the playful credits and the bouncing back and forth. And if people don't like this movie and they're like, and you think that there's the number one reason way, I'd be like, just a quick way, I'd be like Empire versus Full Moon. You can tell. Watch Ted Nicolau, who tried to redo this movie in a radio station as Bad Channels Under the Full Moon, and it's about twice as bad as this. And I love TerrorVision, but Bad Channels is a pacing nightmare. But as far as TerrorVision, the special effects are fantastic, a great cast, a wonderful cast, and people mentioned, of course, Garrett Graham, who steals a lot of it, Mary Warnoff, Diane Franklin, John Grease, who is a 80s staple, amazing in the Fred Dekker, Monster Squad, and Fright Night 2. And a guy I want to mention is Burt Remsen, who is a classic actor, father of Carrie Remsen from Ghoulies 2, and he is hilarious in this movie. Ugly little sucker, ain't he? On the TV. The perverted stuff is warped when you're a kid. You don't get it. The end lines, there's so many beautiful lines in here that are so dark, but also really funny. I don't want to say the derogatory term, but what did that guy do to my the hot tub, the pool? And it's all covered in, and then the one scene that I think is really great is when the alien comes down. It's very much a Critter story. Same year as Critters, right? We got to come catch the alien. And that all predates all the way to the Alien Factor, where and it goes back to the 50s, right? Where we have the guy coming down to get the aliens. And this guy ends up being the TerrorVision monster is a pet, right? and he had eaten their family. It's like, well, we can clone the family out of DNA. And he's like, they'd have to be in little jars. Like, I don't want these jar babies. They'd still be mommy and daddy, though. That whole dialogue exchange is one of the absolute funniest things. And speaking of head explosions, TerrorVision has a fantastic one as well with the alien. This movie is darkly weird. Also does the whole horror host kind of parody of the Elvira really well. But no, this is just a weird, zany, actually kind of gross, very gross kind of movie. But one that I have a huge affinity for. And Buechler was kind of an empire king when it came to the effects. He did a lot of the effects, and it just they make the joke. My buddy, same buddy who made the comparison to Maximum Overdrive, always be like, all the monsters that Buechler makes just kind of look like him. If you watch Cellar Dweller or Troll, there's like his face. He's like molding his face in these creatures. But yeah, big fan of TerrorVision. Complete nonsense. Yeah.
Isn't this the same year that Buechler did Troll? Like he directed Troll?
Yeah. He pretty much wrapped Troll, and they started filming this in that studio, which it used to be a De Laurentiis studio that Charles Band had taken over in Italy. Busy man.
Well, John Grease is also probably known to a next generation as Uncle Rico from Napoleon Dynamite. Just hilarious. I think he's so funny as this rocker OD and
Irish lad.
And from the White Lotus.
He's not going to ever stop working because he's a wonderful, wonderful actor. I'm really glad you called out Burt Remsen, because as Grandpa, he's just a classic. I think he has like 200 credits on IMDb, and he's just somebody who continually shows up time and time again and always brings his A game. Garrett Graham, because again, he is somebody who's just brilliant. I really love him from, of course, Phantom of the Paradise. But he's also in this little twisted movie, I think from 1977, called Demon Seed. Garrett Graham is one of the first victims of that mechanical monster. That was one of the first times I saw him. He also started off with De Palma, in one of his first films. So Garrett Graham is somebody who has just continued to endure. And again, I love that he shows up in Chopping Mall, just doing a little cameo. Mary Woronov was another person who was a huge cult star from the 70s and the 80s. I remember seeing her in Death Race 2000 and just blowing my mind. You mentioned Eating Raoul, and I definitely want to call that up for anybody because that was a huge cult hit, and I feel like people don't talk about it anymore.
I do want to say that I do like Bad Channels, but it's definitely not as good as TerrorVision. But I do listen to that Symphonic Symphony song a lot. It's okay not to like it because it's not actually.
I don't hate it.
It's not really good, it's okay. But TerrorVision's better. But I just want to mention that I do like that movie. I want to be the one.
Well, apparently he also did one called Remote, and I was like, Ted, come on, get a new.
That's the kids movie.
That's
right?
Moonbeam.
Now I will say that Bad Channels is twice as good as Remote.
But I've never seen these subspecies movies. Are they worth?
Oh, they're worth seeing. They're worth seeing.
2 and 3 are super fun for me. I love 2 and 3 are my favorites. So even if you don't like the first one, I think 2 and 3 are they amp up the more fun, I think.
And I did not ever see the most recent one, number 5. Did anybody see that?
Not yet.
Yeah, I got to see it in like a one-night theater thing at the Alamo, so that was fun. It's more of a prequel, but somehow with like the same character. But yeah, it was definitely good to see a full moon movie spending more than like $200 for the first time in a long
Not shot in a
time.
mansion in Cleveland.
Yeah.
not involving a bong or Ginger Dead Man.
Yeah.
Not caught up in 6 different movies for one movie.
Yeah, it was good for that reason. Still recommend watching it. There was a lot to like if you're a fan of the series.
And let's zip up north for our final film, which is Killer Party, which I think has my favorite opening of any of these because it's the double fake out. I love that. And this is, as you mentioned, Dave, earlier, this is a kind of a Canucksploitation. William Fruet is our director. And he's somebody who is kind of the poor man's Cronenberg because he did so many movies under the Canadian tax shelter. He did things like Funeral Home, Trapped, aka Baker County, USA, A House by the Lake, Spasms, and then Blue Monkey was a later one. He's just somebody that does not get, rightly so, spoken of with the same regard as David Cronenberg. He's definitely an important Canadian director and just not somebody that people talk about. Dave, let me go and kick things off with you. What was your first exposure to Killer Party?
I probably saw this one a little later, maybe like 17, 18 years old. And I watched it the one time and I was okay with it. And when I the second time watch was this one right here. I am a big fan of William Fruet. I think Death Weekend, A House by the Lake is probably one of the best Last House ripoffs. Don Stroud is a perfect heavy kind of character. He's good at that kind of role. While the other films are ranging in quality, still enjoyable. Funeral Home is solid, which kind of seems like he's maybe parroting a little bit in the opening because I mean it's not necessarily the same thing, but and Spasms is a load of fun, even though it's nonsense. Viral telepathy, the snake doctor calls them poisonous instead of venomous, just kind of bullshit like that. But they're fun movies. This one, I think that there's a problem. You can tell that it was cut to ribbons. All the gore's cut out of this movie at the end. And it's a pacing nightmare. The opening is brilliant. Then the second opening is even better. And then it cuts to that. And you're like, okay, now we're just doing a early again. We have the kind of sex comedy stuff. And I'm like, I can do this. I can watch the fraternity, sorority pledge stuff all day. And then we get to the ending and we have all these characters introduced, and instead of being a slasher, it turns into a possession film really quick, and it just boom, 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 way too fast paced at the ending, and there's no special effects. I like the characters. It's just that the last act is too rushed, and then there's like the middle act is just too padded.
Larry, how about you?
Yeah, I just watched it for the first time on Friday, and I had a lot of mutual friends that rate it pretty highly on Letterboxd, so I was really excited to finally delve into it. And ultimately, I was a little disappointed with it, but that opening scene, I loved that song so much that I need to get a copy of that. Like the whole video was
White Sister.
White Sister?
Yeah, White Sister. That whole video is great. And, it makes sense that this thing was originally called something like April Fool's Day or something. It was kind of like around the same time as that other one came out. And this one should have been called April Fool's Day, and it would have probably made more sense than Killer Party when the Killer Party is like a third of the movie, if not less than that. So I do like kind of a lot of the April Fool's fake out stuff they do in it, and I kind of wish they would have kept that title. Maybe it would have had a little bit more life to it than just Killer Party. They have some of the most likable characters. I think all the three girls are very likable, but like all the horror stuff just kind of shows up near the end. It feels like they wanted to make a college movie, and they're like, well, to get more money you need to make it a horror, so they're like, okay, I guess we'll just kill people off.
It's just another fake out, Larry.
It's weird. April Fools, I guess.
Anish,
this was my first exposure to it, and I absolutely loved it. Out of all of these movies, the ones that were new to me, this was my favorite. And I think part of it was because I really appreciated the smart structure of it in terms of the double opening, which you have to remember at that time we weren't really seeing movies like this, right? And so in a way it was kind of ahead of its day, and it kind of reminded me of the framing within the frame device that you kind of it shows up 10 years later in Scream, right? So I think this movie kind of had this really wonderful quality of it's unpredictable. You don't know what kind of quality film it's going to be. And I didn't mind the horror part of it really coming later because once it does turn, it turns. And I feel like they really do a great job of making it a very disturbing possession film towards the end. And it kind of sat with me in a way that I just leaned into it more and more as the movie kept going. Yeah, the middle, I felt like maybe was a little belabored with the sort of the Porky's, sexploitation quality of it. It didn't bother me that much. And I think Joanna Johnson as the possessed woman was fantastic. I mean, from going from such a demure character, shy, to being able to climb walls and do things with her face, it was just insane to watch, And then I love the camera work that they did in terms of her climbing that wall, and some of the shots where she was upside down, and I just thought it was just fantastic. I had a good time watching this movie.
Tim.
I remember seeking this one out when I was going through one of my slasher gotta watch them all phases that never ends. Getting it for that reason and being like, I've gone back and forth on this movie quite a bit. So the first time I finally got it, I kind of hated it because it wasn't like that slasher I was wanting. And then, I wasn't expecting it, all the comedy elements either. Revisiting it this time, I liked it a lot more. I don't necessarily like some of the forced comedy, but our three female leads, I like those characters a lot. The setting, I believe, it was filmed at Toronto University, so there was a real abandoned frat house they had used too, so kind of got lucky there. I just like those characters and the feel of the movie. As someone mentioned, it did get cut to shreds. You could see like camera cuts, and I did see an interview with the special effects artist that went describing all the stuff that was cut, and I wish I could see that movie. That movie sounds awesome. But this is fun, and yeah, I do like a lot of the fake outs, and they even all point at the screen and say "gotcha" at the end of that music video, and it's fun.
Yeah, I agree. When I first saw this, I was also in a tracking down all the slashers. This one, because, after you've watched a zillion slashers, to have something that is so surprising, like, oh, there's a possession movie as well. Okay. I remember being quite pleased with that. And we also have a couple of actors, who made a reasonable mark. Martin Hewitt shows up in one of my favorite Canadian horror films, Pim, from 1988. Really worthwhile character study about a guy who falls kind of under the trance of a medical anatomical dummy, worth checking out. And then Ralph Seymour as kind of our nerdy Martin guy. That guy shows up in everything. Like, he's in Ghoulies, he's in Just Before Dawn, he's in Pee-wee's Big Adventure, he's in Rain Man. A very likable presence here. And to what people have been saying, I think all of the characters are pretty likable. Barney Cohen is our screenwriter, and I was like, why do I know the name Barney Cohen? And
Friday the 13th.
Because he's Friday the 13th final chapter, which is my favorite Friday the 13th. And so I've seen that name pop up quite a few times. He never really went on to do a ton more. Having given us Friday the 13th final chapter is good enough for me.
The one criticism I have is that I think the ending, it was okay. I felt like they could have maybe been a little bit more adventurous with some of the things they did at the beginning of the movie. And so there was probably maybe a lost opportunity there with the ending. But, this one is hard to find. I think it's been kind of forgotten about. You can rent it on the streamers. Most people don't know about this movie, and I think they should. It's a really interesting and fun film.
I do want to mention one other thing that I find really funny. Now, somebody did mention April Fool's Day from '86, but this is one of 3 April Fool's movies. Also, Slaughter High is also '86, which I found funny because it's like the event slasher after Halloween, right? So it's like it took 8 years to get to fucking April Fool's Day. They're like, what can we do next? And then they still needed an event name, so they're like, we can't use April Fool's Day. What are we gonna do? An event? It's a killer party. Let's just call it the party. Killer party. They have to know it's a horror movie. You can just see the marketing department scrambling when that Slaughter High were like, you can't use April Fool's Day. They're like, we can't go against Paramount. What are we gonna call this? I don't fucking know. Slaughter High, Killer Party. That's the 2 most generic titles in the world. Which I like Slaughter High, but it's not a good title. I mean, it is, I guess, because I watched it 12 times, so I mean, they got me. But it doesn't take much to get me to watch something. And Ralph Seymour was an actor that he popped up, and I was like, oh shit, this guy, what's he from? And I was like, and then I had to look it up, and I was like, oh, Surf 2, which is a 1983 nonsense movie, which I love. It's so dumb, but again, kind of in the vein of something like TerrorVision or a pre-trauma movie. And yeah, like I said, there's never going to be even if I rated an 80s horror movie low, I would still come back and watch it, just because anything before like 1995, I will watch several times, even in agony. I don't know why.
And one other thing, that sorority initiation, I
With
I
the
don't know how
eggs?
to film that movie. Yeah.
I'm not either.
Yeah.
Can you imagine doing that as an adult? Like they tried to do it as an adult. I'm like, no, you're gonna have to kill me. Like that's just kill me.
Yeah. I mean, they had the eggs and it was kind of
Anish, please describe the scene you're talking about.
Yeah. Basically, they were like, what was it? They were drinking whole egg mix, and then they had to spit it into somebody's mouth as well. And so you're like sitting there watching these actors having to do this, and they're like, did they know that this was in the contract to do this kind of scene, or were they like up for this? I guess apparently they were, because that's what they're doing in that scene.
Yep.
So
Boxer's Omen is the worst doing that of all time. Has anyone ever seen Boxer's Omen?
It's been a while, but yeah.
Ugh, they're just, these three guys are eating and spitting in each other's mouths, and it goes on forever. And I'm just like, they weren't actors, because you look up their roles, they're not in very many movies. So they got just three crazy guys to do this.
One other thing I want to throw in is that our director, William Fruet, directed 27 episodes of Goosebumps. So even if you don't know him, you probably know him.
Yeah, he did a lot of TV after Blue Monkey, it looks like.
Blue Monkey is... What's that?
Can't find any real interviews with them. There's just not that many out there.
Yeah, there was no commentary on this DVD or Blu-ray.
Yeah. He's somebody who, again, I keep looking at his resume and going, I want to know more about this guy, and like what his story was. I feel like he was kind of following in the tracks of Cronenberg, realizing that there was a market here. And they definitely kept giving him projects to do. I agree. I think House by the Lake is just a fantastic, really nasty, like you said, kind of House on the Left knockoff, but it packs a punch.
Yeah. The Canadian setting too, I think adds to it, as like when they're driving around looking for them. And so it's got enough differences in it that I just watched it for the first time on Friday, and it was really good.
So something you said, Dave, and the way I want to kind of bring this around for final thoughts is this was a time when we were getting these kind of movies. I think Reanimator, Return of the Living Dead, the year before, kind of introduced us to the idea that we could have fun and have horror in the same breath. What is it about them that keeps drawing you back?
I mean, some's nostalgia, but I do think, like, we start off early with the comedy and horror films, but they're not exactly... They're like parody, very silly, you know what I mean? To a point where it's like kind of like Bob Hope redos and stuff like that. Like
this isn't like Student Bodies, right?
Yeah, it's not exactly a parody, but I think that they're actually scary, and they're horror films first. It's a horror comedy, not a comedy horror film. I think people like to have fun. And I think the best thing about these movies is it's funny to an outside audience, but if you were actually in the situation, it would be terrifying. Like Return of the Living Dead is horrifying. Like, it's not funny if you're in there. Like, they're screaming at each other, but in real life, we'd all be screaming at the top of our lungs at ridiculous. You know what I mean? So yeah, I think a lot of it is nostalgia, and it's just the way they're made. I think that we probably all just have a softness for that kind of stuff. And I don't know if there's any distinct reason for it. Like my opinions or our opinions are just superior. Who knows? Right.
Well, I think the practical effects also, I think that plays a big part of it, is that everything we're seeing, right down to the raw eggs being splashed on people's faces, like what we're seeing is really, really happening, and people are in it to win it. Larry, what are your thoughts? What is it about this era that appeals to you?
I think for me, seeing a lot of these movies is, I think a lot of these directors wanted to just make a horror film, and with the exception of maybe like Fred Dekker with a lot of that B movie kind of background stuff, there wasn't a whole lot of like, hey, I love horror movies, so this is my love letter movie. A lot of these they're trying to make a horror movie that has some comedy in it. It's not just, because I feel like a lot of movies that try to do that now, it's just like they've seen so many horror movies and they're trying so hard to be that love letter that they forget to kind of make the movie good first. Everyone has seen so many of these movies. Back in '86, we hadn't seen these kind of movies before, so they were making these for the first time.
Well, that's actually a great point, Larry, because I mean, this is still, early days of the video boom. So people are starting to really be able to see movies they haven't seen before, being able to really become connoisseurs of the genre and not be beholden to their horror hosts. So I think there is something that's happening in '86 where also the video market is opening up. People are making movies that are going to video. They're having their success on video.
I think nostalgia is a big sort of theme here, looking back at a time that filmmakers could take more risks. They could be more experimental. They could play to some of the things that they enjoyed and liked about their nostalgic moment, which is kind of paying homage to the early 50s kind of B movies of that time as well. But it was not only a time of looking back, but also a time of maybe thinking about the future as well. Like, what is it that we're dealing with? You were right in the middle of the era of Reagan, where big government was kind of the thing that was kind of really overshadowing a lot of things. And And so I think the idea of being able to have a little bit of fun with your horror was a welcome sort of adventure or escapism for the moviegoer at that time.
Tim.
I think nostalgia plays a part of it, but we mentioned before energy. I think the energy these films bring is something we don't see like as a constant. Like these are all from the same year, and there's just something about them. And I feel like there's just very strong voices too. Like even though this is only his second movie, like Chopping Mall, you know that's a Jim Wynorski movie. For better or worse, Maximum Overdrive, there's a lot of Stephen King elements in there. That's a Stephen King movie. Fred Dekker didn't go to film school. His school, USC, didn't let him in. And like 2 years later, he's filming there in his own movie. You know, because of that energy, that drive, that vision. I think there was maybe just a lot of opportunity for that kind of thing. Maybe more so than nowadays, with the popularity of the horror and maybe even comedy genres in the 80s, kind of mixing that together. And on the lower budget side, you had these opportunities like working with Empire or Roger Corman to get your movies out there. I don't think it's just a thing in nostalgia. Like I've said, watching these, I've grown to like them as a movie even more, revisiting them, as opposed to just like, hey, that's some wacky 80s shit. But these are all well-made films, and you know, there's a reason we're talking about them. It's not just nostalgia.
I think that it's both. I think it's a nostalgia thing and their quality. You know, we keep coming back to them because we enjoy them. It's not just because this is some crap movie that I saw when I was a kid. They hold up and they deliver things that I think a lot of filmmakers didn't feel comfortable mixing that comedy and horror. They were like, well, I got to pick a lane. Yeah. I think all of these find a really nice balance of both. I was thrilled to visit them all together. I mean, I'd seen them all separately, but to watch them all in a nice contained space was really a lot of fun.
Sincerity. They're all sincere. I think that's what's lacking of a movie from today that would be in the same vein. They're not sincere. And everybody is too afraid to put their heart and soul in a movie for someone to laugh at them. So everything's a joke. Nothing's sincere. And that's mostly American movies. I don't think that foreign countries do that. I don't think they give a shit what anyone thinks when they make a movie, because it's, you know, they have government funded sometimes and they have maybe more chances than that. But I feel like everything's just bottom market, especially the low budget movies. They're like, well, I have to put this in because this won't sell. Even the no budget movies, they're like, well, this is this. And you can just see some of the titles. And I don't want to throw out the titles. And they're all about marketing titles. Well, this sells Amityville and Ouija. So we put this shit in a title. And yes, they did that back in the day. And there were people that were guilty of it back in the day to get in the video stores. But even some of the SOV movies from back in the day that are pure shit are sincere enough that I watch them and I'm like, I like this. This has entertainment value for me because it's sincere. And if you're not sincere, then why waste my time?
That is a beautiful way to wrap things up. Thank you, Dave. I appreciate everybody coming on and diving into this big pile of cheese with me. Looking forward to having you all on again very soon.
Thanks for joining us, Tom.
That is the Tom Atkins action figure.
Yes.
And until next time, keep searching, keep exploring, and keep sharing the scare.